Hello and welcome. Slow Made is a nourishing space for jewelers and makers that supports your desire to create a more soulful, handcrafted business and life, one that aligns with your values, your passion, and your creativity. I'm Christine Midgen, a jewelry artist and business owner with over 20 years' experience and the host of Slow Made. Today, I'm really excited to talk with our two fabulous guests about something that I'm usually not too excited to talk about: marketing. Don't get me wrong, I know that marketing is so important to expand our reach as independent artists, but this is honestly one part of the business that I personally struggle with. After I spend hours and sometimes even days working on and photographing a piece, I'm often feeling really quite exhausted. So I use what little energy I have left to list the piece on my website and post it to my socials. Yet, I know as a solopreneur, I have to wear all the hats if I want to maintain a viable business, whether I like it or not. Laryssa Wurstik and Liz Kantner are two of my favorite jewelry marketing professionals, and they host the Success with Jewelry podcast, a podcast that I listen to every week. They're here with me today to uncomplicate what feels like a very complicated subject, and they're going to give us some tips to better market ourselves and our work. Let's go dive in and meet Liz and Laryssa. Hi, Liz and Laryssa. Welcome to the Slow Made podcast. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to speak with you.
We're excited to
Hi,
be
thanks
here.
for having us. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I would like to do is have each one of you introduce yourself, and then I'd kind of like to know how you came about collaborating with each other. So, Laryssa, why don't you go ahead and go first? Tell each other
Sure.
who you
So,
are and what you do and all that good stuff.
yeah, thanks for having us, Christine. We're super excited to be here.
Absolutely.
We love your podcast, so this is really
Thank
fun.
you. I actually love yours too.
Aw,
I listen
thanks.
to it. Yeah, I listen to it all the time. It's on one of my constant downloads.
So, I'm Laryssa Wirstiuk, and I'm the founder and creative director of Joya. And we've been around since 2016 as a digital marketing agency for the jewelry industry. And we have a really story driven, holistic approach to marketing. And I'm also the founder of the Joya podcast. And I have a book called Jewelry Marketing Joy. And Liz and I started collaborating like 2 years ago. I don't even remember now.
It was 2.5 years ago, and we started collaborating because we did we have communities and we have, or we're like
Yeah.
fostering communities for designers and things like that, but we didn't have one. I guess I should say we didn't have a community because, we're consultants and we're working with designers and all of that. So we kind of were like, let's put on our calendar to meet every week and just like chat. And that we were having such interesting conversations that it was kind of like, let's do something with this.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, Liz and I have a lot of overlap in the industry, but we still have our own approaches and our own things that we're doing. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of comforting to connect sometimes.
And not be
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, Liz, why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been in the jewelry industry since 2012. I've been in digital marketing for my entire career. But I had this opportunity to move to Denver. And I just moved there with no job. It was kind of a crazy
Yeah.
thing. And I found Todd Reed on Craigslist and started doing his social media and then eventually became his marketing manager. So it was kind of like a master's degree in the jewelry industry. I worked with him for almost 5 years. And then I had the opportunity to curate the new designer gallery at JA New York. And from there, I was seeing community happen in these trade shows. I was helping to curate designers wanting to collaborate and support each other and come together. And I had this idea to create the Stay Gold Collective, which is a online community for jewelry designers. And it's essentially sales and marketing support, but I have interviews with industry experts, and it's kind of like this huge platform of information if you're looking to enter the jewelry industry. So I've been doing that for the past 5 years, as well as working one-on-one with some clients for doing digital marketing and content strategy. And then my newest project is working with New York Now on a section for emerging fine jewelry designers called Curate It, which is very cool because it's not only doing a trade show, but it's myself and Robin Kramer walking you
Yeah.
through the entire process and giving you like all of the education so you show up and you succeed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot that I don't know about. What inspired you, to kind of go the jewelry route then?
I was
Or
Laryssa
what
has a good
attracted you?
story here too, but I just was so inspired by like just I mentioned this in when you came on the Success with Jewelry podcast, but like I'm just like so in awe of people turning metal into like wearable art. I just was hooked from
Have you
day
ever
one.
tried? Have you ever tried to do it?
I tried wax carving. I'm not a maker. You know how like some makers are makers, like that they just want to make. I'm not that.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, like Liz, I've been in marketing my whole career. I don't even know, 15 plus years. And hopped around to a lot of different industries. I was like in tech, healthcare, education, blah, blah, blah. And I love marketing. I feel like that's kind of my calling, but so much of your satisfaction depends on like what industry you're in
Yeah.
and what kind of business you're actually helping to market. And I just had always been drawn to like creatives and especially jewelry. And I also am really passionate about storytelling, and I feel like there's so much inherent storytelling in the selling of jewelry, and so it just felt like a fit for me.
Yeah. So that just leads me to kind of dive right in here. My audience consists primarily of independent jewelry artists who wear all of the hats. And they may not have a desire to obtain representation through a gallery or work with larger jewelry marketplaces like Twist Online. And they primarily sell direct to customer. Many have wholesale accounts too, but it's not always easy wearing all the hats. And there are times like now when things are slow and you really begin to feel like you're unseen on social platforms like Instagram. And at the same time, marketing, at least to me, feels really daunting. And it's difficult to know where to spend your time and what will really be useful to move the needle. Can you do you have like a few key strategies that are effective for handmade jewelry artists in a competitive market?
Yeah, there's no silver bullet. There's no like one thing that is going to make it successful. Unfortunately, we always wish we had that answer, right, Laryssa?
Oh yeah, I know. I wish we would be millionaires, billionaires if we
I know if we had that answer. But the main thing, like the place to start, and I think Laryssa and I say this in like every single episode we've ever done, is to know your brand and know your audience. Because from there, everything gets so much clearer and marketing just becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think consistency is really important too. I mean, if you whatever marketing activities you're currently doing or like are have an idea that they might work with your target audience, you have to be extremely consistent with them because otherwise you're just going to prolong the process of wondering what is the thing. If you can be more consistent, see what's working and not working through that consistency, then you'll get somewhere a
Right.
little bit faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, consistency is everything. I mean, and it makes it you like consistency, I think designers are like, oh, I have to post every single day is what that means. And that's not true. It's like figuring out what you can maintain and sticking to that. So maybe that means 2 or 3 feed posts on Instagram a week and 2 emails per month. Like what can you stick with? And then once you get into the flow of that and like you're able to like plan ahead and do all of that, it your load doesn't feel as heavy because you know what
Yeah.
you're doing. You have your plan. You know who you're talking to. You know what you're saying. And then it just doesn't feel like as big of a burden as marketing sometimes feels like.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that there's some real differences in marketing approaches between an independent jewelry artist and a well-established brand.
I think like the general concept is the same, but depending like how big your audience is and how established you are with that audience, I think that's going to be what makes the difference. Like an independent jewelry brand could have a really devoted, established audience of 1,000 people. And the kind of approach might even be similar to like a bigger
Mhm.
brand, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of thinking about it the same way. Marketing is always the thing I find with makers, especially that like drops off their to-do list because they want to be at their benches. So
Yes.
yeah. So blocking off time on your calendar for like I love a marketing Monday because then you can kind of get all your ducks in the row for the week. But like blocking off time so you have it, and maybe you block off 2 hours and you don't use it every week, but you like at least know this is when I'm checking in to make sure my Instagram posts are planned for the week. And, I know what emails upcoming and I've like responded to the emails I need to, or I've taken photography and things like that, that you do all of that. And you kind of can do it in batches to help yourself save time.
See, for me, that's hard because I don't even know what I'm going to make sometimes. I don't have that planned out. And so, the talking about it or the Instagram post comes after it's done or during the process. The photography, same thing, emails. I've tried to move to doing kind of collection releases once again. But even through the summer, I don't have a lot of time to work now. So I'm just putting one piece out at a time when I can do it and telling people about it. So the batch thing has been really a difficult, I don't care how hard I've tried to do it, whether it's Pinterest or whatnot. It's been a really hard thing for me to stick with. And I know in talking with some other independent slow made jewelry artists, it's the same thing.
Yeah, we work with we have clients that are kind of like that. They sell one of a kind, they do drops, and it absolutely presents challenges with the marketing
Mm-hmm.
calendar when you only have like so much visibility into what's coming. But
Mm-hmm.
then for the sake of trying to have consistency in the storytelling and making sure there's always something planned, even if it's like a backup option, we then look to like the bigger story beyond just whatever product's dropping. And so, like, what are
Right.
the brand values? Like, what are the bigger stories? Like, what are the gems you're drawn to? And we strive to then plot out 6 months calendar, even if that creator has literally no idea what products are coming.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that, but even like, jewelry care or just small little videos,
Yeah.
could be really effective with that.
I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that helps you. Sorry,
No,
Liz.
go ahead.
I think it just helps you feel more grounded, even if the plan changes like in the midst of things, to know that there's always something
Yeah.
that could be used for the marketing, and then you can like be flexible with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, having like doing a brain dump and like having like content ideas that are evergreen is such a great thing to think about. I also want to say that it's okay to like post things that you've posted before. Like maybe you have some pieces that haven't sold that you haven't posted in a while. Like that's something you could always kind of fall back on. Or like maybe you want to drum up some custom business so you can share some custom projects or testimonials. So there's a lot of ideas out there. And I think a lot of times designers get stuck in, well, it's not new, or like I need to be
Yeah.
keep showing new. And that's not the case. That's going to be very stressful.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can absolutely relate to that because you always feel like you certainly want to sell what you've made and you want to show something fresh, and it takes you so long, to get a body of work done or a collection or a piece. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that.
Sometimes it can even be detrimental to have such a focus on the new, because in a way you're like training your customers to only care about
Mm,
that. And you have to remember, like, you control the narrative, so how take that pressure off yourself to like be like, I need to like show a new thing. No, like you're in
right,
control of the narrative. Like
right.
you give the curated view of what you want your audience to see. And in a way you like train them kind of.
Yeah. So, how important is it for branding for independent jewelry artists, and what steps can they take to build a strong brand presence?
I think it's so important to do the work in advance of like even just like a document with bullet points of like what is my brand? What is my core message? What are my goals? Again, your audience is really important to think about too, and knowing who you're speaking to, and just doing the work of putting that on a document or on a piece of paper. A lot of, especially like handcrafted jewelers, especially if they're coming from like hobbyists to creating a business, don't do that work of thinking about their brand, or they find branding to be super overwhelming and something that they cannot tackle, like that they need like a polished PDF and to hire a branding agency. But like, you really just want to be clear on what your brand is and what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And one thing I'm pretty sure Liz and I have talked about this a lot on our podcast, Success with Jewelry. It's like a lot of designers get overwhelmed. Like it has to be this perfect, written in stone, whole big picture. And we promise you what you have on day one is not going to be what you have on year 5 or 10. And you have to be okay with that and see it as this like living, breathing, evolving thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can say for myself, mine's definitely evolved and changed numerous times. And I think, kind of going back to branding itself, I think a lot of times, especially when you're newer and you're starting off, you're thinking about that. What's my brand going to look like? What's, I get my business cards or, my website and all of this. But, to your point, Liz, about, just having those bullet points and talking about those things to reinforcing brand is really, really important as well. It's not just your collateral products.
Yeah, I think people get stuck on like logo and like packaging of, what it looks like and all of that, which it is important, but it can be an evolution, to Laryssa's point. Like it's not going to be like day one, this is it. It's something that you're going to keep evolving. Right. And like knowing with my own personal business, it's been a slow thing. I just got a real logo last year. It's like I'm doing the best I can as a solopreneur,
Sure.
And that's okay. I know what my brand is. I have done the work of like understanding who I'm talking to and what I'm trying to say. And so the logo was less important. And I did it when I had the budget.
Yeah.
I really liked that phrase, like, see the forest for the trees. Or I can't even remember.
You can't see the forest through the trees or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like, a lot of times when solopreneurs, makers, they come to me, they'll ask kind of what Liz said. They're like, I'm really stuck on like, should I put this little thing on my packaging or not? And it's like, let's step back, like way back here. A lot of times the big picture gets missed for these like little details that, yes, so they're important, but those aren't going to be the make or break things. Like, let's zoom out a little bit here.
Yeah, that's, I think of it like that's the bedazzling part of your jewelry, your packaging and all of that, and that can absolutely change over time.
I find it sometimes a little bit of like a procrastination thing. Like people think they're like, I'm working on my marketing. Look at me working on my marketing. But really they're just spent 10 hours like agonizing over like one little thing, when really like you should have been doing something like bigger or more strategic kind of. And it's a way to almost convince yourself that you're like doing marketing when really like you're procrastinating on something,
Yeah. So then go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like I will start reaching out to stores once I'm done my line sheet, and it takes like 2 years to finish your line sheet.
Yes.
Like, start reaching out to stores now. Like you can deal with the line sheet later.
We see that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what were some of the common challenges that you see, especially with like independent artists when it comes to marketing, and how best can they overcome them?
I mean, I think the saturation is like a huge issue. Like there's just a lot out there, a lot for people to purchase. So it's so important to like know what you're trying to say it consistently, and make sure you're speaking to your audience and not worrying about like kind of what everyone else is doing. Because like the more unique your perspective is, and the more you communicate directly and create connections with your audience, the more success you'll find.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now I'm taking applications for a grant, and one of the questions is literally like, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to marketing? And I would say like 90% of the people that have applied so far just say they don't have enough time. Mm-hmm. And time is like a big issue. And I totally understand that marketing is time consuming. I mean, this is my full-time job and I do it full-time for the clients that I serve. But I think what needs to be remembered here is that marketing is the business. Like the business isn't going to be a business without the marketing. And I think too many people come into it with a mindset that marketing is this separate thing that like I can do later, or it's like a priority after I do A, B, C, D, E. But like it truly is the business. And so no matter what, you have to find some kind of time to do it. Like no matter what, when, how, like it needs to happen. It can't be separated out.
That kind of leads me to think about I jumped into working with a publicist as I got to a point where I had my first almost six-figure year on Etsy. And I was like, oh, I'm going to, kind of take this a little bit farther. And so instead of thinking about marketing, I just jumped in with a publicist and didn't really realize the cost involved with that, as well as the fact, nobody was telling me, oh, this is a long-term project. So would somebody be better served? Because I got some great press, and that certainly validated my brand. But it didn't necessarily, move the needle quickly on sales. Especially then I had moved off of Etsy. I was in my own website, and it was much quieter then. So, should somebody, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when should somebody consider putting their money into marketing as kind of their next step? Or
It's
hiring
so tough.
somebody to take that
As soon
that
as they
on.
can.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I see it, okay, I'm biased because I'm a marketer, but I see the PR and the ads. The marketing is like a foundation of a house, and the PR and the ads is like, I'm going to make my kitchen look really nice, or I'm going to do my bathroom. Like, I don't think that that's a step to take if the foundation's crumbling, because those ads, PR, like you said, they could put eyeballs on your business, but if they come and the marketing is like falling apart or not where it needs to be, the whole thing is just going to fall down, you know?
And that's so true. I see a lot of designers jump to like PR or jump to sales rep, but it's like they don't have their collection fully fleshed out yet, or like don't understand their pricing, or they haven't done their line sheet, or they decide to do PR, but or spend ads on Instagram, and they don't have their website in line, and they don't have like everything kind of in place.
Email marketing.
Email marketing. They don't have everything. So they're putting like clients into a funnel, sign up for my list, but they don't have the emails ready to send, or like check out my website, but their website hasn't been touched in years and hasn't been updated. So it's like making sure all of that stuff works before you add on, a PR agent or a sales rep, or spend on ads. Cause that, to Laryssa's point, they'll send them to your business, but it won't do anything.
Yeah. The PR is not going to sell. The product page and the follow-up of someone looking at the product page is going to sell.
So what does it look like when someone begins working with you?
Larissa has a whole onboarding. Larissa has a whole onboarding process.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for me in our business, the client needs to be at some sort of stage to be ready to work with us. I think that person have had to take the business to a certain point and literally exhausted everything they could do on their own with marketing, and seen the realities of that firsthand, and then coming to us. So if they're coming to us and they've like never tried marketing on their own before, that's not a good fit for us for many reasons. But I think the expectations are really high too. It's like, oh, I've literally never bothered with my marketing before. Good luck. Like, you figure it out. You know what I mean? And so we are best matched with clients that have tried it, put their like honest full effort into it and they're like, I've taken this as far as I can, like help me. And then we figure out the priorities of like where we can go from there.
Yeah.
For me, I work primarily in content strategy, so I need content. I need to understand the story. It needs to like feel compelling, and then I need photos and videos and a designer who's willing to like work with me to provide those things. But something that I've learned about like what I personally want to do is that the clients that can afford a full-time consultant like me are great, but I wanted to work with designers who couldn't quite yet. So that's why I created the Stay Gold Collective, because I love working with artists who are maybe not quite at that point to hire somebody full-time, but I want to help get them there. So that's the goal of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that because, myself, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know where the starting point was or when I was ready for that. So it's good to have that information there.
And I would say
Yeah.
that both Laryssa and I love talking to designers. Like, DM us, let us know. Like, I'm always glad to talk to somebody if they're like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, or, I know Laryssa does discovery calls and things like that. So we're not just going to like have you sign a contract and work with you. We want it to be a good fit. We want everyone to find success.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at least for me, there's a line between audience building and marketing. And what I mean by that, audience building, especially if you like just started a jewelry business, in a business plan, you would need like a product market fit. So making the products and putting them on a website does not mean you're ready for marketing. You need to kind of like test to see like, are there people who are willing to buy this or at least have interest? And I think a jewelry business owner needs to explore that first before they go full marketing, because you can't do marketing to like zero audience. Like that's not gonna do anything. And so there needs to be a period of time or a process where even just the business viability has been like tested out.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah, that's so true. It's kind of like deciding to do a trade show before you've done any wholesale outreach. You want to have
Yes.
some traction before you decide to do a trade show, which is kind of a misconception because people are like,
Yeah.
oh, the trade show will get me that audience, but it's just kind of a different world now. You want to do some of that outreach on your own. And the same as like, before hiring a marketing person, it's like, well, I need to understand what I want to be selling. And if I have an audience for it, I want to be having streams of income before I start paying someone else.
Right.
And there's
right.
so much involved in that, like your price point, like, is the pricing a match? And that's even like way before marketing can even happen.
No. Most of us really rely on social platforms to reach our audience and gain new followers. And with the ever changing environment on Instagram and kind of the decrease in visibility we're all feeling, do you have some tips that we could use to improve our presence on the social platforms and create a presence that our audience wants to come back to time and time again?
Yeah, nurture them one-on-one would be my biggest piece of advice. Ignore the algorithm. Laryssa and I have been having some like bold conversations about this. Not to alarm your audience, but it's kind of like we've been having this conversation about the algorithm for literally like years. And we have to stop, you do not own your Instagram audience. I know it's a great tool for especially, handcrafted designers or independent businesses that don't have a big budget for other things, but you need to get your audience on an email list. You need to get their emails. That would be like another big tip. It's like one, nurture everybody one-on-one, create a more intimate one-on-one experience, and two, get their email address and start sending emails.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, and listen, I have really strong opinions about this. They're like stuck in the Instagram of yore. And if it's like the fact that it doesn't
like the Etsy of yore.
Yeah.
Not
coming back.
Like the fact that it doesn't function how it did like 5-7 years ago. Like I hate when people literally are like complaining about the algorithm like in their posts. I'm just like, if you don't like it, then find a different way to connect with your audience or accept it. It's like a little bit embarrassing. Honestly, you know, like Liz said, you don't control Instagram. They can do whatever they want. We may not agree with like the choices they're making, but like that's their business and you have your business. So it's like, adapt and maybe find a way to make the best of it, or find a different platform, or connect one-on-one, or get those people's email addresses and connect with them on email. It's just, that's the reality. Like, us complaining about it isn't going to change.
And by
That's true.
adapt, we don't necessarily mean like doing the dances or doing the reels or like whatever you need to do. Don't worry about that. I get asked a lot, like, should I be using hashtags, or like, what's the like video to post ratio and things like that. It's like, how are you going to show up consistently? How are
Yeah.
you going to be able to tell your story consistently? What feels like your brand? What does your audience connect to? Those are the things we need to think about, and we need to stop trying to like please this algorithm, or look at what other people are doing, because just because you're going viral, and I've worked for companies that have had viral posts, that doesn't necessarily mean you have sales. And that's something really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's the forest
Yeah.
for the trees thing I mentioned. Like, that hashtags are not, like, that's not the question. Like, that's not what the question you should be asking. Like, let's zoom out and see, how is this working in the whole strategy, and do you even want to like be part of it, you know?
Yeah. I think my favorite, actually, it seems like some of the artists that I've talked to that are doing the best really don't have a strategy. They just post when they want. They're not following the trends. And I think it's difficult, even like right now in the summer when I'm not posting as much. I'm feeling the pressure, like I should be posting every day, because you just hear it over and over and over again. And recently somebody said something along the lines of, look, Instagram's still free marketing for you. You just have to look at it that, maybe it's not as good as it used to be, but it's free. At least at this point it is,
Yeah.
and I thought that was a really good point. And then speaking of, a post going viral, someone in my Patreon community had mentioned, we were kind of talking about this, and they said, do you really want a post to go viral? Do you really want this influx of, new followers who may not necessarily ever even want to buy anything?
Mm-hmm.
They just thought that
Mm-hmm.
was really neat, and, your work's cool, and they're just kind of looking from the onside. Maybe your posts are then not going to reach the people who are really going to buy, or they just drop off.
Yeah. Especially if that viral post is like wildly different from like what your normal content is all about, and you're just doing that for the sake of like getting attention. There's no point in that.
Yeah.
No, followers and likes are vanity metrics. I and I know like followers, I understand the argument of like, oh well, I am trying to expand my reach. I'm trying to get seen by more people. Well, that's when you want to think about strategies like collaboration, where you can like really get in front of a targeted audience with a strategy in mind, versus just having followers for the sake of
Right.
having followers.
Right. Right. So then talking about email list building, and yeah, emails are just another one of those things that have been a struggle for me. It's like, kind of a, what do I want to say, an afterthought. And I've really tried to put down a calendar and think about when I'm going to do it. And like I said, all bets are off right now in the summer. But do you have some suggestions on what artists can do, and makers, other than just sharing their work, and the importance of connecting with their audience in an authentic way, outside of just saying, hey, I'm having a shop update, or, look at this new thing I made?
There's so much story to tell. There's so many stories to tell, and it's hard when you're in it. But Laryssa and I love brainstorming. I think we've done episodes where we've just brainstormed. But there's so much that can be said. I kind of like thinking about it like doing like kind of alternating between like a product focused email and a more storytelling focused email. But with handcrafted artists and artists in general, I love hearing about the inspiration. Like, what inspired this one pair of earrings? Like, tell me everything, because I might really connect to part of that, and that might make me want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so we manage the bulk of the work we do for our clients is email marketing, and we have to, we're paid to come up with ideas that are not just always sales driven. And like when you're on the line for that, you figure out things to talk about. Like yesterday, the 23rd of June was National Pink Day. So, like, one client does a lot of pink sapphires, perfect opportunity to talk about that. The summer solstice just happened, and like one client sells sunstone. Cool, perfect opportunity to talk about solstice, sun. Um, sleeves are getting shorter. It's getting hot outside. Let's show off like bracelet stacks. People travel for the summer. Okay, what's your like capsule go to weekend getaway like jewelry wardrobe? Like
Yeah.
we have to think of stuff. And I think if you put that same pressure on yourself, like hold yourself to having to tell a story, you like start to figure out things to say about your brand and your work.
Yeah.
And when you think about it in terms of like what Laryssa was saying, some of those ideas in alignment with like the seasons that are happening or things that are on other people's minds, it's easier to connect because everybody's talking about summer right now. I mean, it's like just an obvious thing to think about. That's like a great connection point.
It's funny because I was thinking how so many of us are introverts. We like working alone. We like that whole process. We don't want to bother anybody. And so there's always that concern of, looking at our own inboxes and seeing all of the emails and writing too much. What type of emails really interest you that make you want to open it?
Anytime like there's a story about something, I want to read it. I want to hear more about a specific piece or a collection. I love seeing like inspiration collages and like things like that, or like hearing directly from the artist. I like when
Yeah.
artists talk directly to me. My favorite brand to receive emails from is May Lindstrom, which is a high end skincare brand. And she, even though she's grown at this point, writes in first person and shares these like really like thoughtful stories that I feel like I can connect to. So I love an email like that that just feels like you're writing directly to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you,
We,
oh, go
yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just think with email marketing, less is more. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
important to tell a story, but like in a really
Concise. Yeah.
concise way. And I think, we were talking about dating on our episode. I don't think we mentioned it here. And how, how marketing is kind of like this courtship. It's like, well, on the first date, like if you like the person, you're not going to give like everything away. You want to like leave them hanging a little bit and want them to be intrigued and interested. And it's kind of like that with marketing and with email marketing too. Like nobody's sitting there on their phone, like reading your novel about XYZ. Like they just want a little tidbit. And if they're interested, they're going to click. And the click to the product page is ultimately like what you want them to do.
Yeah.
I think it's also some mindset work because I like received an unsubscribe from my email list this week and sorry to share this.
Screw them.
It's just on my mind. No, but the reason they said was because they said I send too many emails and I send like 2 a month, like which I know in Laryssa's mind is not too many emails. But as an introvert also, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am bothering people. I need to stop. This is 1 out of, over 1,000 people. And I just like got very much in my head about that. And you need to do some mindset work. Like those other people on the list liked it. I received like some great feedback. Like I need to put that in a folder or print it out or remember that like sales is a service, marketing is a service. Like this is a good thing that I'm doing that all artists are doing. So we need to keep doing it.
Yeah. Could you share some examples of jewelry artists that you feel are effectively marketing their work?
Our favorite is Marla Aaron. I think that's like one we go to all the time.
Yeah, I'll have to look her up. I don't know her.
She's really great because she is quirky. She has a very distinct point of view. She tells her story in a really strong way. It's very clear what her story is. And she brings herself into it a lot. She's very transparent about her team. And her marketing just always stands out to me.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's not to say, we always say that with the caveat of like, you don't have to have that voice. Like, you don't need to be quirky, you don't need to be XYZ. It's the authenticity and the commitment to that brand perspective that stands out to us.
No. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's a really, her voice is just really strong. And I think anytime somebody like just leans into their niche, leans into their voice, it stands out to me. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of good ones. I also love Grania Morton. That's one that I think is really a great, she is very consistent with her Instagram, the way she presents her work. It's kind of a simple concept and she just keeps kind of doing the same thing over and over again. She has a beautiful about page where I feel like she like shows these great photos and really talks about collecting small objects and things like that. There's a lot of good ones. Polly Whales is really good.
Polly Whales.
Yeah. Speaking of like leaning into like something that's pretty niche, like she's not speaking to everyone. She is speaking to her audience.
Yeah, I think it's, I think of myself and then some of the artists I talk to, and it's like, yes, those are big brands, and it almost feels like it's untouchable to even create um, that type of story, that type of image that will get you the following on the level that you're at, But I think that
Yeah.
it's taking those small steps to connect more, whether it's in your website too. We often forget about that, telling your story there over and over again. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a bit of a mindset thing also. And I hear that as well, even in one-on-one conversations with clients. Like, I recently told my client to go look at Stephanie Gottlieb, who's like basically a jewelry influencer. And the response was like, well, I don't have that money. I don't have the team behind me. And I think it's not about that. It's more about the approach that can be adapted to like wherever you are. And you have to kind of tell yourself that like where I am now, I can like do what I can to step into like the brand that I want to be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great smaller artists doing great things too. I'm like the one that keeps coming to mind here that I'm going to share is Sierra Kalin. She's in
Oh,
Joshua
yeah.
Tree, and she does like she just has a really distinct way that she shares her like on the bench. She's pretty transparent like in sharing her story and talking to her audience, and it's clear that she has a connection with the people who purchase her work.
Yeah.
So
I
that's one
love
that I
her.
really love
Yeah.
too.
I wanted to have her on, and she had to reschedule at one point, but hopefully I'll talk to her again soon. I really fell in love with her. She just seemed like somebody that you'd want to get to know, and just was, yeah, incredibly authentic.
Definitely.
Well, while we still have a few minutes, I'd love just to kind of switch gears here and have you talk about your podcast, Success with Jewelry, and your membership. And, why did you start this when you're already both very busy? And what do you feel that it can offer, independent jewelry artists?
We're laughing because don't know why we're still doing it because we love having these conversations and we love hearing from jewelry designers. We love providing information. I love personally just like talking to Laryssa.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have fun. It's just fun
have
for us.
a really good relationship.
We do. And we've only met in person once, which is crazy. But speaking of that, we're doing a meetup in New York City on August 4th. If anybody's in New York and wants to meet us, it's kind of surrounding the New York Now show. But anyway, if anybody wants to meet up with us. But yeah, listen to Success with Jewelry anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple. And then we have a community which you can join by visiting successwithjewelry.com. And each of our episodes has, an extra 20 or 30 minutes for insiders, sometimes longer. And those are just really, really fun. If you want to become an insider, it's $10 a month or $100 for the year. Let us know if you have questions about that. We're trying to create a community. If you become an insider, you have access to Laryssa and I. You're welcome to ask us questions. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. So then, as an insider, it's, if I'm understanding it correctly, is it mostly the focused on the episodes and then the questions that they can contact you and find out more? Do they have any connection with each other that they can chit chat back and forth and all of
Yeah,
that?
we have a community forum that we're endlessly trying to cultivate engagement in because it is hard to build community. I mean, it's
Sure.
not lost on us like how, you know, hard it is to build engagement as a brand and all of that. But it's mostly the insider episodes that you're getting, like the extra 20 or 30 minutes that's kind of gated for insiders. And that's where we really have our most raw conversations and give our strongest pieces of advice.
Yeah. Great, great. Yeah, well, like I said, I love your podcast. I listen to it, I think, pretty religiously. Maybe not as much in the summer, but it's one of the rotations I have in my studio.
We love to
Cool.
hear
Thanks for
it.
listening.
Where can everyone find you? Find out a little bit more about you. Obviously, they can listen to the podcast, but kind of get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Liz_Kantner, Kantner. But if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. I want
Fantastic.
to support artists. I'm not, I want to be there for you. So if you have a question or anything like that, just feel free to reach out.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and me, Laryssa, I'm at Joya Marketing, and I also have another podcast, the Joya Jewelry Marketing Podcast. And yeah, go to joyjoya.com for more information.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for taking this time out with me. I know that my listeners are going to love this.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for
This was
having
fun.
us. It was fun.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would like to ask you to take a moment to rate and review Slow Made on your favorite podcast listening platform, and maybe even share an episode with a friend. This really helps in spreading our message as independent artists. You can also support the Slow Made podcast by joining the Slow Made community on Patreon. I've made the membership extremely affordable, starting at $3 a month, and every dollar goes towards the cost involved with producing and maintaining the podcast. And if you would like to be a guest on the show or have someone you'd like to hear me interview, please send me a DM on Instagram at Slow Made Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.